Under the Department of Hawaiian Homes, do you understand who is the Department of Hawaiian Homes?
Yes.
Okay. Through the Department of Hawaiian Homes, which was an act of 1920, Hawaiians were identified as native Hawaiians with a small N and a small H through the Hawaiian Commission, Native Hawaiian Commission. Do you understand that?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation, lacks foundation, that he has any knowledge with regard to this.
Okay. What do you understand Native Hawaiians to be?
People who trace their ancestry to the inhabitants of these islands prior to the arrival of Europeans.
And what year would that be?
There's a recognized year of when Cook came, and there's also discussion of perhaps earlier visits by the Spanish.
Okay, so with that statement, you do understand what is Native Hawaiian?
I think that I believe I understand what is Native Hawaiian that you're referring to.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to understand if you understood. Could you explain to me, I'm assuming that ASM means, or could you tell me what is ASM refers to?
Currently, it refers to nothing. It's just 3 letters.
Okay, so it's used in your testimony, ASM.
Yes, it's the name of a company that I work for.
Okay, so as you identify this term, ASM, in your written testimony, what is it referring to?
If you're asking, I'm not sure I know what you're asking me.
Okay, I'll go to your written testimony. Okay, maybe I overlooked what I was saying. Strike that. What do you identify an archaeologist on a project? What are they identified as?
I'm not sure I understand
Is it
the
an
question.
archaeology, excuse me, archaeologist monitor? Survey monitor?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, I'm trying to find out what do they call archaeologists that work on sites to monitor particular ongoing development.
Archaeologists have different roles on different projects. So on projects where we're retained to do monitoring, we would call them an archaeological monitor.
Okay. I guess so. Archaeological monitor. Okay. So that's what you would identify them as on a project.
On a monitoring project, yes.
No short letter like AM or ASM. No.
Maybe,
Okay.
in some reports, some folks, instead of having to write archaeological monitor every time, might put the acronym or something, AM, but I don't think that has any significance.
All right. Have you done any archaeological monitoring prior to the TMT site on Mauna Kea?
In me personally, in my
Yes.
life?
Yes.
Yes.
And so you've done archaeological surveys and monitoring for other projects on Mauna Kea?
Not on Mauna Kea. Not on the mountaintop. We went through this earlier. On some lower elevation places on the mountain, we've done work, yes.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't here when you went through that. So, on the top, where all the observatories are currently stationed, you have done no work there.
Let me just ask for clarification. You mean excluding the work that he's reporting on?
Can you
Yeah.
clarify?
Prior to the...
Yeah, prior to the TMT, your work for TMT International or TMT Corp.
Prior to the 2013, the first study that we did for TMT, I had not done any work, physical work on the top of Mauna Kea.
Okay. Do you have any, what do you call it? Do you have any, when, let's say if there's EV that have been found and there was no archaeological study in that area, or survey, sorry. And then they uncover something, would they call your company to come and assess it?
They could.
Have you ever had those situations happen throughout your experience?
Generally speaking, or on Mauna Kea?
Generally speaking.
Yes.
Okay. And what about on Mauna Kea?
No.
Thank you. When doing an archaeological survey, what procedure is taken as far as surveying the area? Visual?
Yes?
Any digging?
Again, are you speaking generally or specific to any of the work that we did on Mauna Kea?
Okay, well, I'm actually just trying to find out your procedure when you survey a particular site.
There's occasions when we do digging, yes.
Okay, so let's say you're asked to come to a site like the TMT proposed site, and you're to do a survey of archaeological studies or survey. What type of survey do you do?
We first do a visual walk over the entire property, and for that particular site, since it's all solid rock, unless we observed any kind of archaeological feature, that's all that we would do is a visual survey.
And you would grid each section?
We walk a grid. We don't lay strings out or lines out or anything. We use GPS and compasses and walk a regular pattern across the property.
So you basically survey every inch of the property of that whole development?
Depending on how you define that.
Well,
I mean, I don't set my foot on every inch of the property, but we visually look at the whole place, yeah.
so just a visual look, survey, if you do not see any artifacts visually, then you would not know, right? Am I correct?
We don't know anything about what we don't see.
That's a good answer. I'm just trying to think of my next question, but I got it written down here. It's just that it was asked earlier, and I'm trying to rephrase it in my mind. Oh, do you have a degree in geology?
No.
Do you have an understanding of erosion?
Yes.
Okay. So, how old would you think that the Pahoehoe on the TMT site is?
I don't have that information handy in my head.
Is it new?
No.
Is it fairly new?
No.
Is it really old?
It's old.
Okay. So with knowing the elements of, do you know the elements that are faced with, exist in the area of Area E where the proposed site is? The elements such as snow, rain, floods, wind, earthquake. Do you understand those elements that Mauna Kea presents?
Yes.
So would you agree that those elements can contribute to a lot of erosion?
Yes.
So in that area of the proposed TMT site, there are areas that have pockets filled with erosion, such as sand, cinders, silt. Did you recognize those areas?
Yes, I believe I know what you're talking about.
So, let's say you're doing a walkthrough survey. You see those pockets. You don't know what's under it. Would you say that there's nothing there?
Those particular pockets that you're talking about are identified as a sort of a geologic phenomenon that takes place there.
True.
With the movement, almost like mini glaciers that happen overnight in thawing and heating, thawing and cooling processes. So those are, to me, are completely natural features that are locally derived, and I'm comfortable and confident that they're not archaeological sites or contain archaeological features.
Okay. Have you ever found shrines or ahus in your discoveries, not necessarily the TMT site?
Yes?
Have you ever found shrines or ahus or upright stones on the TMT site?
Yes?
In other sites besides the TMT site that you have discovered these owls, were they tested for age?
I'm not sure what you mean by tested.
Well, let's say, what are ahus consist of? Grass, rocks?
Constructed rocks.
Okay, so how would you figure out the age of those owls to determine whether it's a historical site or a lowly site?
An assessment is made based on the characteristics of its construction. There's no physical way to take the rock and date it that's relevant to archaeology.
So it's basically just a visual determination by an archaeological
Yes, it's a visual determination.
archaeologist.
It's a visual determination and sometimes also coupled with other historical information. So there's cases where you can look at an 1840s map and it marks Ahu or stone stack, and then you can actually find that still existing today.
So archaeologists actually rely on pre-surveys by other archaeologists.
By other archaeologists and historical map makers and surveyors, yes.
So have you ever discovered any artifacts throughout your line of work?
Yes.
And how was those artifacts discovered?
Through archaeological survey, visual inspection of properties, as well as through excavations within known archaeological sites.
So the excavations, when you proceed to excavate a known archaeological site, would you have to have some kind of permit to do that as an archaeologist?
Yes.
And the permit, would it allow you to start digging in that particular area?
Yes, it's a permit to conduct archaeological studies within the state of Hawaii.
Oh, this is in the state of Hawaii. I was
Yeah.
just thinking in general. Okay. So what is section 106?
Section 106 of,
Yes, it's in your direct testimony.
Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. It's federal guidance for the identification of historic properties related to federally funded and other federal undertakings.
Okay. So after walking and doing a survey over the proposed TMT sites, erosion, these cracks and crevices, you wouldn't know if the settlement by erosion would have covered any of these artifacts, EV, ashes, pico, umbilical cords. Or afterbirth placentas.
Object to the form of the question, because it states facts, not in evidence. The implication of the question is that there exists these types of artifacts on the site, and that's not been established by the evidence.
Mr. Freitas?
Well, he can establish it. Can you establish it?
Can you rephrase your question, maybe?
Okay. Let's say you see these silted pockets or eroded areas that have settlement of sand, silt, cinders in these pockets along the Pohoihoi, within the Pohoihoi. You wouldn't know what is under. You already admitted you wouldn't know, right?
I don't know what's under those particular pockets,
Okay.
but it's,
So, without knowing that, would you know if there would be any type of artifacts, pico, placentas, ashes? Would you?
those particular deposits, as you say, are erosional features. So they erode out things that were there. So if there was something there, they would have eroded out. If that part of the mountain isn't a depositional part of the mountain, it's an erosional part of the mountain. So these erode out. If somebody were to take something and place them inside these features, and not leave, and put it back exactly how it was by nature, and not leave any other mark, there'd be no way for me to know that.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to ask you. Sorry, I thought he was still standing. So, knowing that a visual survey as an archaeologist, as a lead archaeologist, and directing other archaeologists, you cannot guarantee me, as a native Hawaiian, that there is no iwi, no artifacts, no pico, no placentas in those areas.
I cannot guarantee you.
Thank you. Do you understand the function of upright stones, ancient upright stones such as ship the 16172? I believe it's on Exhibit 12, page 3.
I'm not familiar off the top of my head about what that site constitutes.
Is it an upright stone?
Yes. I found a picture of it, so I can.
Is it a Shipdi site?
It has a state inventory of historic places site number.
As a lead archaeologist, wouldn't you have to know?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
As a lead archaeologist, okay. As a lead archaeologist, to do a survey for development proposed on this site by TMT, your responsibility is to identify any historic findings. So could you tell me what this historical find is? Shipdi 16172.
It appears to be an upright stone.
So it's listed in the State Historical Preservation. That's what SHIP-D stands for, right?
SIHP stands for State Inventory of Historic Places. So it has a State Inventory of Historic Places site number.
Good. Okay, thank you. Do you know the function of this type of stone or upright stone?
I believe that the function of these has been interpreted as shrines.
Would you have any idea how old that one is?
I would not.
So in your interpretation of shrines, what are they used for?
A variety of purposes. This particular one, you'd be more specific to me to be able to answer that. You'd have to be able to more specific for me to answer that, if you're referring to this particular shrine or shrines in general.
Would it be an area to mark an area?
It could be used as a marker.
Could it be an area to mark an area of pico, EV, placentas, artifacts, meaningful to ancient Hawaiians hidden under these eroded, silty, cindered, sandy areas?
In my opinion, no.
So you're saying that Native Hawaiians, that you have what, 800 discoveries, cultural discoveries, is that in your testimony?
I didn't make 800 discoveries, no.
It says you have done I think it was 800 discoveries or archaeological surveys in your written testimony on the second paragraph.
It says that I've completed more than 800 projects. That could be a survey project, it could be a monitoring project, it could be a burial treatment plan project, it could be a variety of things.
And those are all in the state of Hawaii?
Yes.
Okay, so with all that experience, you wouldn't know if that marker means that there could be some of our kupuna in those areas, under those sandy, silty, eroded, cindered areas, pockets.
Object to the following question, speculative. He's asking whether there's a possibility that has very little evidentiary value.
Mr.
So
Freitas?
it's a speculative question.
Okay. So you already admitted you wouldn't have any idea what would be under any eroded, silty, sandy, cindered areas.
My only evidence for what could or could not be under those is based on previous work. One of
Okay.
those was excavated and nothing was found there.
And how was it excavated?
A prior archaeological company did an excavation, a controlled hand excavation into the center of one of these features that you're talking about and found nothing.
And how do you know this?
It was reported on in a study.
And was it a new digging? The other company, was it a new company or an old company from?
I'm not sure which company it was at this. I'd have to
Okay.
do research to answer.
But
the
you
question.
do know, you have knowledge that that company dug the place up.
I have knowledge that at one particular site, there was testing done of one of these features, and there was nothing found.
Would you agree with me that it could be somewhere else instead of that particular area?
Let me object to the form of that question. Vague and ambiguous. It could be somewhere else, not, I don't have a definition of what it means, so the question is vague.
Could you clarify, please, Mr. Freitas?
Okay. Could it be in another silty, sandy, cindered, eroded area?
It being what?
Artifacts such as Evie, placenta, pico, ashes, human ashes.
I don't think that I would find placenta or pico. I think that they would have disintegrated if we dug into there. There's always the possibility that something like EV could be found, and that's why we have an archaeological monitor present during the work.
But when I asked you if you had any degree about Hawaiian culture, culture means everything. Pico, Evie, placenta, ashes, and such on. Artifacts, koi, all those different things. Would you have an idea?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question in that.
Excuse me, ma'am, I thought I let him, I was just explaining part of the question. Did I? I forgot if I asked him a question on that.
I don't think you did. But when I asked you if you had any knowledge about Hawaiian culture, culture means everything, pico, iwi, placenta, ashes, such as artifacts, all those different kind of things. Would you have an idea?
Would you have an idea?
Again, I'm really sorry. An idea of what?
She just read it to you.
I heard what she read, but I still, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay. Fair enough. Have you ever, in this archaeological monitoring, I understood when Mr. Flores cross-examined you that you're not the only one that monitors any activity that was done for the TMT proposed site.
It was staff members of mine.
Yes. Okay. So I heard you exclaim that they actually follow the equipment as they're ripping through the land.
I tried to have them actually either be astride of the equipment or slightly ahead of it, but not in the way of it.
And so how fast does these heavy equipment move while they're ripping through the aina?
It's relatively slow.
So it'd be easy for them to see if anything pops up or...
Typically, they have a very good vantage point from a tall piece of equipment to see if there's anything that pops up.
So you wouldn't know if there was any like you said, you would never have an idea if there's any pico, placenta, ashes.
If there was physically something there, we would probably see it. If there's an ancient placenta or an ancient pico, it probably doesn't exist anymore, physically.
I understand that. Yes. But you wouldn't know if the proposed TMT site was used for those things, would you?
If there was no physical evidence of it, I wouldn't know.
Thank you. So even knowing that you wouldn't know because you didn't see it, that is how you can give a final determination that there is nothing, no significant bones or artifacts in the proposed area to be used.
Yeah, we make a determination that we did not find any bones or artifacts in the area with a recommendation. I didn't do the inventory work for this property. We just did a couple of reconnaissance surveys. But typically, if I felt like there was a reason to have precautionary monitoring or there was a requirement for it, then an archaeological monitor would be present during the work in the event that something unexpected turns up.
When was your first experience up on Mauna Kea? What year? If you can recall.
$1992.
Was that when you were in school, in college?
It was after.
Also, what about when you were in college? Did you come and visit Mauna Kea? I believe I heard you testify that you experienced Mauna Kea in 1980 or something.
My experience in Hawaiian archaeology, the first project I did in Hawaii was 1989. It was on the island of Maui.
Okay, all right. Was that in Kihei?
No.
Okay, I'm trying to find, excuse me, I'm new to this stuff, so I'm not as quick as, I'm still learning how the functions work, so I'm doing the best I can.
Me too.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking for the page that has that Area E and all those the find spots, location, and the map of it all.
Page 3 of Exhibit C12.
Okay.
This one.
You have that in front of you?
Page 3 of Exhibit C12, yes.
Okay. Do you see those, I know you went over this with Mr. Flores, the find spot 2005.08 and 06.
I see those.
Okay. And the area that, that dark spot there, is that the proposed TMT site area?
The area on the opposite
Yes.
side of the road from
Oh, yeah.
200506, yes.
Okay. So those find spots, they were determined by you not to be any religious, native, traditional, customary practice spots?
No.
Who determined that? I didn't get who.
I don't know that anybody made a determination as to the origin of the religious nature of those sites.
Oh, the religious nature. When you come across upright stones, is it your understanding that it could be religious or
Yes.
spiritual?
Yes?
What about ahus, ancient ahus? Would you?
They could be, yes.
Okay. Are those two fine spots still in existence?
I don't know.
When you did your, I think it was your recon on Exhibit 16 about was that your last visit in December of 2015? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. And that was Exhibit 16, I believe.
Yeah, that was my last visit to the TMT site.
Was those two fine spots still there?
I don't know about Fine Spot 2005.06. I don't know that I ever did that. 2005.08, when we put up the protective fencing around it at an earlier project, the stones had already collapsed or fallen down or were down.
Oh. So those are the two stones that were upright stones?
At one point, there's a photograph,
Sorry.
an earlier photograph where they're upright, and when we were putting up our fencing, they were no longer upright.
All right. Sorry, I'm trying to get to that particular. I was on it and then I redirected myself. Sorry, excuse me, your hearings officer. Are you still on that same page, page 3?
Yes.
Okay. You see the ship number 1, the one we were looking at earlier, 16172,
Yes.
and it's right on, I believe, an elevation line that is 13100, I believe. Is that what it reads? The elevation line.
I don't have elevation numbers on the map I'm looking at.
Those topo lines, the ones that show the contour of the land.
Yeah, I see a number. It looks like 13,000.
13,100.
It's blurry on mine. I can't quite make it out.
Okay. And then there's the next line up above. In your surveys, do you document the elevations too of these particular sites?
Yes?
And compared to the TMT site and that particular ship 16172, what is the distance from the site that is to be excavated from that particular ship identified point? Or document. I see the elevation for the ship number, but as far as the TMT site, I'm trying to,
But
go ahead.
by the scale of the map, it looks to be 150 to 175 meters away.
From the next line up, yeah, where the TMT proposed site is.
From where the
The-
TMT, yeah, the relationship of the contour lines and distance, there is none.
100 feet. you
No,
said.
but the contour lines are changes in elevation,
Oh, yeah.
not in linear distance.
Yeah, but between each line, there's a distance, right?
No,
Not in your document there?
no.
So,
The distance is elevation.
okay.
The lines could be next to each other and be 100 feet apart in elevation.
So let's say that that particular ship number 16172 was used to mark the area of traditional ceremonial placement or burial of certain parts of our Native Hawaiian culture, such as pico, placenta, ashes, EV artifacts. Would that site, would this development impose on any of that? Would you know?
I wouldn't know.
Okay, thank you. The next contour line that is just below, that would be the road going down towards the site, is ship number 21449. I think it's in the same Exhibit 12, page 3. Yes, Exhibit 12, page 3. I'm trying to identify what figure it was. Please excuse me, I'm not trying to take more time than I need, but I don't have a copy of all the exhibits that he had placed, so I'm using my laptop to find it. I'm sorry. Was there a diagram of this particular site? 2144.9?
I did not include a map of that
Oh, okay, that's why I can't find it then.
because it was determined not to be an archaeological site.
Okay. So it's not a SHPD.
It was given a state inventory of historic places number, but later it was determined that it was not a site. There's a photograph of it.
So who determined that? Who are you looking at? I'm sorry, I keep seeing you looking before you answer me.
No, I'm trying to, there's a light right
Oh,
there, and it's shining in my
sorry.
eyes. And then I look, and then there's one right there.
All right.
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
Who determined that it not a historical site anymore?
I believe that SHPD made a final ruling that it was not a site.
Who is
State Historic Preservation Division.
With your experience as a lead archaeologist, and over 800 work-related archaeology, would you determine that as a historical site?
No, it's not a historical site.
How would you know that?
It's one of thousands of natural features that occur on that landscape.
So it wasn't man-made.
No.
Okay, on page 12, same exhibit, page 12. I think Mr. Flores went over this, but I have a few more questions about that. You testified that prior to the drilling or bulldozing, you never did any survey there on that site.
We did not.
So when you came in to do the survey, archaeological survey, was it after the bulldozers came in?
No, we did monitoring with this project during the bulldozing activity.
But you didn't walk the site before the bulldozing?
No.
So you weren't there when the two uprights were found on figure 13? Identified as newly placed uprights?
We were there the day before they were there, and we were there the day after they occurred. They happened during the project.
During the project. So there's two stones, right? There's a dark stone, and there's one that kind of blends in with the landscape, with the whole cupola around the bottom, the base of it. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So, were you there? You witnessed those stones being there after you surveyed the land?
Me personally, I didn't. My monitor, who was there on site, observed that the stones were placed overnight between 2 days of working.
Are those two stones still on in that area?
I don't know.
Have those two stones been bulldozed?
I don't think so.
So when your monitor returned it, when your monitor reported it to you, did you document it? But I guess you did because you got the picture here. But I mean, did you do any kind of effort to stop the project?
No.
Was it only because it was a newly erected stones?
Yeah, we're tasked with protecting historic properties.
So when you see whole cupola around a stone, wouldn't you understand that is a spiritual and religious practice?
It could be.
It could be. Have you seen Native Hawaiians practice putting offerings such as on other historical or on other in other ceremonies pertaining to pohaku?
I've seen Native Hawaiians and other people putting things in, yes.
So you make the determination right now under oath that it could be, but it's not.
No, I do not make that determination. I made no determination about these sites. We just documented their presence.
And you have no understanding of where these stones went.
I know that At least one of them was dislodged.
Dislodged meaning,
Laid, I wasn't there to witness, so I don't know, but probably just laid down to the side where it was.
so are these, this area where the stones, or that particular stone was dislodged, which stone was it?
I don't know.
What did your monitor report to you?
I don't have that specific information. She reported that both were dislodged.
Both were dislodged.
Yeah, that's what we reported, yes.
And were they dislodged by a machine, or were they dislodged by our personnel?
It was reported to me, I have no firsthand information, but it was reported to me that they were dislodged by an individual.
And would his name be Wale Ishibashi?
It would.
And which stone was dislodged by Wale Ishibashi?
I couldn't tell you.
What did your cultural monitor report to you?
I don't have the information. She didn't report.
Did your cultural monitor watch him dislodge the stone?
I didn't have a cultural monitor present. I mean, maybe just a slip of
not
turn.
Cultural monitor, your archaeological monitor.
Yeah, she was present, wasn't paying, it wasn't, her job was to watch for archaeological sites and historic properties. So when this happened, whether she was paying full attention or I don't know. We just know that Wally was there and at least one of the stones was moved by him. We reported both stones were dislodged by OMKM staff. I believe that's true, but I don't know who exactly moved those rocks.
So, you testified now that she said that Wally moved it.
Yes,
Do you know which one it was? The dark one or the one with the hole?
I don't know.
Did she follow the bulldozer?
She was walking with the bulldozer. This
Did
was,
she walk alongside the bulldozer as it ran those two stones over?
they were not in the area that was bulldozed.
So those two stones are still there then?
Possibly.
Are they near ship number 21448?
No.
Are they near find spot 2005.8?
No.
Are they near find spot 2005.6?
No.
Are they near ship number 16172?
No.
So let's go to page 3. And that's the diagram of the area E. The proposed TMT site is. It's the map, the historic properties in the astronomy appraisal. Figure
Okay.
2.
Yes.
So along the roadway, or the bulldozed roadway, about what area was these two stones located at?
Somewhere in the vicinity of the boundary of the TMT development site area that's shown as that large blob in the middle of the pink area on the map. Sorry, on the map.
So that's that bottom area where the what do you call roundabout is, or where they made where you go around.
Yeah,
the very
in,
bottom.
in that area, yeah.
So it's in that area.
Yeah.
So you're really not sure if it's still there then.
I don't know.
Okay. That figure below in figure 14, where the drill is drilling and there's a la'i laying in place there.
I see that.
Was that there already before they stuck that drill in the ground?
No,
Who placed it there?
I don't know.
Was your archaeologist there?
Not when it was placed there.
So it was there already?
No, it was placed during the evening overnight when nobody was there, when we weren't there.
So it was placed there before the drill was set up to drill there.
No,
I'm confused. Please explain.
the drill was left overnight in that location, and in the morning, when they showed up to work, that bracelet was placed at some point during the night in that location next to the drill rig, right there, as you see in the picture.
And your assistant found it, or was it you?
She was on site that day.
She was on
Yeah.
site that day. Does she have any understanding of cultural practices?
I don't know that I can answer that question.
When you do archaeological survey, do you brief them on going into areas that may have historical properties or artifacts in, and how they're supposed to proceed with it according to the respect of our kupuna's EV or artifacts?
We have discussions about that.
So when she saw the lay there, did she just say there was a lay there after we came back?
No, she documented it in a photograph, took notes, and informed OMKM of its existence.
Would you agree that it was placed there because the native Hawaiians' connection to the land?
Object to the form of the question, calls of speculation, no foundation that he would know what other people did at the site.
Mr. Freitas?
He has an understanding of native Hawaiian practices.
But he doesn't know who put it there.
I'm not asking him if he knows who put it there.
What are you asking him?
I'm asking him if he understands why it was put there.
His answers to your questions regarding Native Hawaiian practices appears to be very general. So if you would like to ask him if he knows that and set the foundation, then you can go forward. Otherwise, I will sustain the objection.
Okay. You testified earlier that you have seen Native Hawaiians practice give hokupu.
Yes,
And you did say you have a brief knowledge of Native Hawaiians giving offerings.
yes.
Would you consider this an offering?
Again, I don't know the ethnicity of the person who placed that there. I don't know anything about other than the fact that it was placed there.
So, when you see hokupu that is native tea leaf or laua'i or certain ferns, compared to crystals, which is the difference?
I recognize the difference between those. But
Okay. So what are the La'i ferns compared to crystal?
they're more of a traditional offering.
Thank you. So would you consider that as a traditional offering, just looking at the picture?
Again, I'm not trying to do anything. I don't know who put it there. So I can't speak to that.
Okay. Let's go to figure 15, right below that. I think it's on page 13. Example of a natural stone banked. How do you pronounce that word? Geolification. Sorry, I'm not trying to be funny.
Gelifluction.
Jellyfish. Thank you. I won't forget it. Can you explain to me what does that mean, jellyfluction, Harris?
As best as I can. Again, I'm not a geologist, but I believe it has to do with a movement and a sorting by size of the rocks through a natural process, through a sort of a freezing and thawing process that takes place. And there's thousands of these in that area.
Knowing your experience, your professional experience as a lead archaeologist, could you say that this particular picture here resembles a dry set or dry stacked rock terrace?
It does.
And maybe backfilled with cinders, silt, soil?
It does, and that's exactly the process. It's a natural process that creates that, yes. Like I say, there are thousands of these in that area.
Have you ever experienced watching Native Hawaiians dry stack a wall?
Yes?
Or a pipe?
Yes?
Who determined that this was not a significant site?
It appears to have been excavated in 2000, and not this particular one, but one like this, excavated in 2005, the one with the SHIP site number, and nothing was found, and as a result of that study, which has, I believe, a 2010 date on it, Pat McCoy, it was determined that that particular site that was given a site number by somebody else is not a site.
Okay, so this particular site here is site 21449?
No, this picture is of another similar looking feature on the landscape.
So, being an archaeologist and somewhat geologist, because you would have to know if those rocks were stacked or if they were just eroded into place, right? Knowing the area, does it have a lot of loose rock before the excavation went in?
There's a bit of loose rock, yeah.
So there wouldn't be enough loose rock to build a nice wall, would there be?
I don't know if I can answer that.
Could you say that whoever may have built this use whatever rocks that they could assemble some kind of terrace there?
Object to the form of the question. Misstates facts and evidence. He said this is a natural geological formation.
That's what he said.
That's what I heard.
That's not what it looks like. I'm a Paul County.
Okay, so what is your question to him?
I asked him the question that because there are too much loose rocks prior to the excavation, that whoever built this had to use whatever was available in that area to build a terrace.
But your underlying assumption that is that someone built it, and that's not his testimony.
No, I said could have built it. Did anybody say could have in the first time? Sorry.
Well, then it's speculation. So
Okay. Sorry. This thing keeps going on. In the second page, page 14, figure 16 is the same area. Do you see that? Figure 16, natural
Yes,
terrace bisected by bulldozer.
yes.
So that particular site, after the bulldozer went ahead and ripped through it, did your archaeologists go and sift through to see if there was anything significant?
They performed a visual inspection of the material that was there.
Do they take samples to analyze it?
No.
So they wouldn't know if there would be ashes, EV, placenta, pico, artifacts?
If there were any physical remains of any of those things there, they would know it. They would see that.
So if those remains deteriorated through being there for a while, like decay, would they be able to analyze if there was something there,
No.
such as ashes?
The ashes would still be present. The EV would still be present.
For how many years?
In this environment, for as long as as Hawaiian people have been in Hawaii.
So just a visual inspection, that's all she did? Oh, was it she? Miss Glennon?
Forget which report we're looking at.
We're looking at the same figure, 16?
Yeah, I'm just,
Oh, you're looking for the report?
yeah.
Sorry.
It would have been Miss Glennon, yes.
Did she call you first or just make the determination to just let the bulldozer rip through it?
We discussed it beforehand, and it was okay to go through these natural terraces. They're like I say, they're numerous. There's many of them.
Okay, so many of them. You testified that Mr. McCoy excavated one out of many of them.
Yes.
Would you know if any of the other ones would have any ashes, EV, artifacts, placenta, pico?
No.
Thank you. Let's move to Exhibit 14. Are you there already?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm here.
Sorry, I'm not. Okay, Exhibit 14. Before I move into this, do you have any understanding of spirituality?
It's kind of a broad, general question. I don't know how to answer
Well,
that.
do you have you do have understanding of Hawaiians' connection to the land as far as spirituality?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, shoots, I'm sorry. I misled myself and you. I meant Exhibit 15.
I'm there.
Page 2 and 3. Before, while this access road was being bulldozed, at any time were you part of that monitoring physically?
Yes.
Yourself.
Yes.
After they were done bulldozing, did you survey any part of the access road?
Yes.
To what point does your monitoring end as far as monitoring the full scale of the bulldozing of an access road?
When the ground disturbing activity stops.
That's including,
When the ground disturbing activity stops.
that's including the grading of the road too?
Yes.
Backfilling of the pad?
Yes.
Crushing of the stones excavated?
If there's crushing going on, yes.
They did have a crusher up there, didn't they?
I don't remember. Sorry.
How did they construct that pad for the opening groundbreaking ceremony after they broke the ground?
Just with pushing the material around with a bulldozer.
Is it normal that they cut a road before they go to groundbreaking on most developments?
I'm sorry, ask that again?
I said, is it normal as an archaeologist to see the a development proceed before a groundbreaking ceremony?
It's normal to see development associated, and actually regularly see development associated with the preparation of areas for groundbreaking ceremonies associated with projects.
What does groundbreaking mean to you?
It's a ceremonial term for the kickoff of a development project.
And normally the ground is already broken.
Yes.
So after the access road was developed in figure 2, when did you encounter this particular ahu?
We encountered these ahu during a field reconnaissance of the development site and the access road on July 7th, 2015.
And prior to you doing a reconnaissance and discovering this ahu, when was the last time you were up there?
Probably in September of 2014.
So almost a year
Yes.
there. Who brought this to your attention?
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
Well, who brought you this particular owl to your attention?
I don't know that there's any specific person who brought it to my attention. I knew that they were ahu built up there, but until I took this photograph, I hadn't seen it myself.
So this is a photograph that you took
Yes.
personally?
Yes.
And was Wally Ishibashi with you?
No.
Was Miss Nagata with you?
No.
Was any other rangers with you?
There were rangers on site, but they weren't with us.
Rangers, like ONK rangers? Or Mauna Kea Support Service
Yeah.
rangers?
They were in the general vicinity, yes.
Was the TMT security guards there?
Yes.
Was anything removed from this ahu?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you remove anything from the ahu?
No.
So you only surveyed the ahu and
We-
visually surveyed it.
Correct.
And what would you see on top of there? What do you see on there?
Are you referring to
On the ahu?
figure 2?
Yes, same figure.
There's a variety of offerings placed on top of it.
Thank you. In figure 3,
Yes.
when did you survey this? Or,
The same day that we saw the other one.
okay. Did you remove anything from this ahu?
No.
Did you look into the ahu?
No.
Was that the last time you saw it?
No.
Or when was the next time you saw it?
On December 11th, 2015.
And what was the purpose for that?
It was to do an update to the reconnaissance that we had done earlier. And that's reported in Exhibit C16, sorry.
And who called you to do that?
Uh, 30-meter Telescope Corporation staff.
So between July and December, Did you notice that the owl is still the same? Do you have a picture or a description of it?
I don't have it in my reports. I would, from my recollection, I would say they look fairly much the same.
Was any of the stones moved?
I don't know.
How much longer do you have, Mr. Freitas? It's
I'm
been an
done.
hour and a half.
I'm done. Thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm not good at this, and I apologize. With this, I'm talking.
Pointing to your computer.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas.
Thank
Let's take
you.
a 10-minute break.
Thank you, Mr. Rechtman.
Thank you.
You're watching Naleo TV.
Contested case hearing for the 30-meter telescope project, a proceeding for the State of Hawaii, BLNR, Board of Land and Natural Resources.
Get started, please. And we have Dr. Rechtman for cross-examination by Ms. Aluli, but before we begin, I should have reminded you earlier, but I remind you now that the testimony you are giving remains under the oath you took earlier to tell the truth. Do you understand and do you agree?
Yes, I do.
All right, very good. Ms. Aluli?
Yes. Good afternoon, Dr. Rechtman. My name is Yuklin Aluli. I'm the attorney for KAHEA, one of the petitioners. I notice in your exhibit C12 that you have a paragraph on page 1 called Anticipated Remains. And paragraph 2, you acknowledge that Mauna Kea and its summit cinder cones to this day still play an important role in religious and cultural practices to many Native Hawaiians and non-Native Hawaiians alike. And you go on to describe some of the features that are present in the summit area, including adze, subsurface artifacts, rock piles, and fine stops. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Would that be the stuff of an archaeological inventory survey that would have to take place on the proposed construction site for TMT that you've described as remains?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, I'm just trying to understand whether you believe that an AIS would be required beyond your initial monitoring efforts in these first 5 reports.
I assume that an AIS was conducted of the site.
Have you seen an AIS of that site?
I know that I've seen archaeological inventory surveys that included that site area.
And by that, you're referring to Dr. McCoy's. It's cited in your bibliography then. Is that what you're referring to? The bibliography for C12. You've cited AIS for the astronomy precinct that was done in 1910.
2010, yes.
Okay, excuse me, 2010. Okay, so you have not, in terms of your master services agreement with TIO, been engaged to perform an AIS?
No.
Now, going to your statement or the context in which you opened with your first report, you had answered a question about landscape. To what degree does previously, in response to a prior question, there is a term called archaeological landscape or cultural landscape. Have you heard those terms before?
I've heard those terms, yes.
Do you see that the Mauna Kea summit area has such an archaeological landscape as an archaeologist?
There are portions of the summit area that I'd consider an archaeological landscape.
So in your perspective, you don't view it in a totality, the summit area?
Not archaeologically, no.
Okay, so to that extent, you disagree with Dr. McCoy, who viewed it in a more practice approach versus a container approach?
Not necessarily.
So what do you consider the limiting factors in how you view the Mauna Kea summit? Is it that you are only looking for built structures of historic nature?
That would define an archaeological landscape.
Okay. What to you then, if your definition of an archaeological landscape is man-made built structures having an age of greater than 50 years, is that correct?
That summarizes it. Yeah.
Okay. So when you were engaged to do the monitoring services for TMT for this particular 5-acre site and the 3-acre access road, it was for the limited purposes of looking at man-made structures of age over 50 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But you as an archaeologist, you have a PhD in archaeology, is that correct?
Anthropology, yes.
Anthropology. And you have described in your CV, which is Exhibit C11, that you have done more than 800 cultural resource management projects throughout the state of Hawaii. What does that mean, cultural resource management project?
Cultural resource management is a term for contract archaeology. So it includes projects that are archaeological inventories, reconnaissance, preservation planning, treatment planning, burial treatment planning. And I've also done cultural impact assessments.
And cultural impact assessments take you beyond the purview of the man-made structure of over 50 years of age, is that correct?
Correct.
Have you done approximately how many of the CIAs have you done?
It's a rough guess, maybe 30.
Okay. And in any event, that was not the terms of or scope of your engagement by TIO, was that correct?
Correct.
However, you did introduce your report in a context of being situated in an area which is significant to Native Hawaiians and non-Native Hawaiians, both in a religious and for religious and cultural practices, did you not?
Correct.
In your work, and actually in your profession as a PhD in anthropology, is it not the case that you also have to engage in a certain amount of interpretation of these man-made structures having an age of over 50 years?
Yes.
And that interpretation takes into account the land on which it is situate, as you just went through the geology with Mr. Freitas previously. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the human beings who live there, who made those man-made structures. So there's the people and the place that are the context for the interpretation of the man-made structures of over age 50 years.
Yes.
And that constitutes a place in its totality as we mere humans understand it. There's a lot of literature in your field by persons like Gertz and Mircea Eliade who talk about place and the sacred. But those are those things that we just described, the people, the land, the structures, the interpretation constitute in a totality the place.
Yes.
And so in that context, your interpretation of this area that you were hired to do this work on, although it was limited to over age 50 years and man-made structures, it nevertheless has to be interpreted in terms of the past and ongoing cultural and religious practices that took place there and are taking place there today. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand
Okay,
that.
too long a question. Well, you as an archaeologist and an anthropologist, you cannot only cut it off at age 50 years. Is that correct? In terms of understanding this place?
In terms of the regulatory environment under which we're working and what we're hired to do, there are criteria that describe what's a historic property, and there are criteria that describe what's not a historic property. So we were retained to deal with the protection and potential discovery of any historic properties.
And you understand, I know that the terminology finds is something that is found in these maps that we discussed earlier today. Finds, new finds.
Or find spot.
Yeah, find spot. And that is intended to mean man-made structures of under 50 years. Is that correct?
I think that's part of the definition.
What's the other part?
I think it was also structures that when the term was coined were of indeterminate age, but assumed to be modern as opposed to of antiquity.
Well, this particular spot, now that you've had an opportunity to look at the maps, you know that it is in some proximity to the NAR, correct? The 5-acre Site E.
Objection, Your Honor, just clarification. It's vague and ambiguous because it's not defined which spot she's referring to, and there are many that have been delineated.
Well, I'm talking about the 5 acres, which is Site E, which is the context of your survey. You could probably take a look at, I know you did not identify the fact that in your map, which appears on page 3 of Exhibit C12, you did not identify this map as depicting an area of the historic district of the Mauna Kea Summit area. But you have in fact clarified that it is within the historic district. Is that correct?
We saw that boundary on an earlier
Yes.
map. Yes.
And so you would say that on your figure 2 on page 3, you situate the proposed TMT website, construction site within the Science Historic Astronomy District of the Mauna Kea Summit. Is that correct?
It's within the astronomy precinct.
Okay, and you know the astronomy precinct is within the historic district.
And that's within the historic district.
And you don't know where the NAR is one word for the NAR is the adze quarry. Do you know its relationship to what the area you studied?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know that the adze quarry is within a natural area reserve designation under the state of Hawaii?
Yes.
Although it's not shown in your report, on your figure?
It would be, in this scale, it would be 4 or 5 pages below this page.
Okay. Have you, and you've mentioned in your testimony that In answer to a question, when you see an upright stone, you consider it a site of religion or religious practice. Okay.
I don't know that I said that every time I see an
If you
upright
see
stone.
an upright in Mauna Kea summit area, does it connote a religious, or does it have a religious connotation?
Not always.
Okay. Are there any heiaus in Mauna Kea summit area?
That's a broad term. You would have to define for me more specifically what you mean by that.
Well, there are the traditional Hawaiian religious platform structures, which you will see throughout all islands except for Necker Island and except for Mauna Kea Summit. And in those two places in the Hawaiian Islands, they are upright. The heiau structure does not exist in Mauna Kea from what the literature I've read. Have you seen a heiau up there in Mauna Kea Summit area?
There are Native Hawaiians who would consider the uprights heiau.
Okay.
Heiau does not mean a platform structure. A heiau is a location. It may have no physical manifestation there whatsoever.
Well, there are shrines, correct? Hundreds of shrines
There are
in the Mauna Kea Summit area.
There are shrines in the Mauna Kea Summit area.
And
yes.
the shrine areas can include a whole conglomeration of uprights and platform and terrace.
Yes.
So they can actually be temple complexes. So we call one place a shrine. It may have multiple uprights and maybe some terraces.
Yes.
And you go down to the heiau on Kawai High, and is there an upright there?
I don't know.
Okay.
On the heiau platform, on the large construction platform itself, I believe there are uprights.
Much like the ones up in Mauna Kea?
Upright stones.
Okay, with the female stone at the bottom and the male stone standing above?
I'm not sure of the interpretation of them.
Okay, well, you've testified that you practice your archaeology in the Pacific. Is that
Yes.
correct? So were there other areas of Polynesia where you practiced this archaeology?
Yes.
And did they include the Tuamotus or areas such as Tongareva where they would have the similar uprights as we have here?
I haven't done research there, but I'm aware of similar uprights in other places in Polynesia.
Okay. Are uprights present in other parts of the Pacific?
Yes.
Okay, and where would that be?
I've seen upright stones on sites in Samoa. I've seen upright stones on sites in Fiji.
And they're all in the same connotation as shrine as presented up in Mauna Kea.
Not exactly. There's a varieties of interpretations and functions for similar looking uprights.
Do you know what the interpretation of the function is as the hundreds of uprights that are up in Mauna Kea, what their interpretation would be?
They're interpreted as shrines.
Okay. And do you know that the shrines have been observed to have been in association to burial sites by Dr. McCoy?
No, I don't know that.
Okay, well, if I direct your attention to Exhibit A122, page 7-5. Third paragraph down. And he is in this instance discussing the NAR and its impacts on the Mauna Kea summit region, but he says, wherever they have been found, burial sites tend to occur in clusters of 2 to sometimes 3 mounds, platforms, or terraces, and the recognition of shrine clusters comprised of 2 sites and similar-sized burial site clusters is a pattern that would seem to reinforce the notion of family units staking out a piece of land to be used over a number of generations. You see that there?
I do.
Do you disagree with his analysis or interpretation of the archaeological landscape in Mauna Kea as consisting of these clusters of terraces, shrines, and burial sites, which could have interpretation in terms of land use?
I don't disagree with what he says here.
Okay. Now, Dr. McCoy also describes that he considers on page 7-12, beginning in on page 711, he states, as you did, that Mauna Kea is viewed by Native Hawaiians as being a sacred center. And on page 7-12, the large number of shrines in the first paragraph, the large number of shrines in the summit region have been interpreted as the remains of an historically undocumented and apparently unknown pattern of pilgrimage to worship the snow goddess Poliahu and other mountain gods and goddesses such as Kukahau'ula, Lilinoe, and Wai'au. Do you see that there?
I see that there.
Do you disagree with his interpretation of the Mauna Kea summit as being a area of pilgrimage?
No?
And he has gone on further to describe ascent and descent routes from the Adze Quarry going through the Mauna Kea summit region down to the lower regions and the state park on the state park on the Saddle Road, the Hamakua Coast. He's gone on to describe that in a map on 7-46, and I believe it's figure 416. Have you seen that map before?
I don't recall if I've seen it before, but I'm looking now.
I recognize this AIS was done in 2013, and he began his work in 1975, so this appears to be his last known work. He describes that from the lithic materials that Mr. Reese or Neese found along these trails, the shrines, the burials, and dwelling structures, that these were the routes that the pre-contact adze makers used to take them. There are 9 pathways here to take them to the various sections of the island of Hawaii. Do you have any reason to disagree with that interpretation that he has made of the Mauna Kea summit region?
I have no reason to disagree
Okay.
with that.
Now, he also has an interesting discussion beginning right after this, where he talks about some more contemporary practices. And in one instance, on page 7-49, they describe the propitiation practice. And in this instance, it would be in the second paragraph in 7-49, where ahus or numerous stacked and piled stone ahu in the Nar and science reserves suggests that the placement of many of them occur along or near what we believe were the ascent and descent routes as indicated by flax scatters and or shrines with ads manufacturing byproduct offerings. Do you have any reason to disagree that this practice of leaving ahu has its origins in pre-contact Hawaii?
I have no,
Well, you call them ho'okupu, and they were described in your monitoring reports as being finds or contemporary. The ones that Mr. Freitas cross-examined you on?
right.
Basically little on the path
Of some sort seems to be a continuance of
tribes on page attack because they didn't need stone when they had metal. viewing viewing
further work required preservation or data recovery. And data recovery would be that the state has agreed that the site can be mitigated, data recovered through excavation. And the data that's collected is the form of preservation for the site through the collection of the data.
Would it be accurate to say that really data recovery is just a note made in a book that says that this was there, but it may not be anymore? That's a way of removing physical
Typically,
evidence. Excuse me, go ahead.
Typically, it's much more than that.
Could you elaborate then?
It usually involves developing a set of research questions or research problems one's trying to address with the archaeological data recovery work, and then a substantial analysis takes place of the materials that are excavated or collected or recorded for a property, and then generally a lengthy report is generated.
Do you consider the Hawaiian people to be a living nation?
I'm not sure I understand the term of living nation, but I will answer and say I consider the Hawaiian people to be a living, viable people.
Okay. Would you also agree that with your historic background in archaeology, that you recognize that burials are a very essential part of the Hawaiian religion?
Yes?
Okay. In your understanding of Mauna Kea, have you known it to be a sacred space for Keakua?
Until you added the Keakua, I was with you.
Okay.
It's considered by Hawaiians
As a very sacred
to be a
space.
sacred space.
Okay. In your understanding of the history of Mauna Kea, do you recognize that prior to Western contact, it was considered kapu and not available for the general public to go to?
That I don't know.
That you don't know. Do you know it to have been referred to as a burial ground?
I've heard it referred to by some people as a burial ground, yes.
Okay. You also have you also heard it to be referred to as a living temple?
I've heard people reference that, yes.
Please excuse me, I'm trying to compose myself. This is a very sensitive issue with me. Can you give me a couple of other areas? Let me go back here. Were you aware of the cultural monitoring or cultural discoveries that was done on Mokapu Island on the island of Oahu?
I'm not sure of the cultural monitoring, but if you're referring to the Mokapu Sand Dunes burial area, I'm
Yes.
aware of that.
You are aware of that? Hmm? Do you know, you also recognize that there was many burials Hawaiian barrels found on Mokapu?
Objection, Your Honor. Don't know what the relevance of this is to Mauna Kea.
It has to
There
do
are burials throughout Hawaii, so I'd ask for an offer of proof.
Mr. Fergerstrom?
I'm trying to get to the depth of his understanding of cultural practices, and his being an archaeologist and historically involved with a lot of the removal of kupuna iwi all around the islands. Like, for instance, Mokapu, Naue, Kawa. You're familiar with what I'm speaking of, Mr. Rechtman.
Well, Your Honor, he's not testifying on cultural practices. He's testifying on archaeology. So I don't know, but the offer of proof doesn't make it relevant to his testimony.
We've had a lot of questions on this gentleman's knowledge of those kinds of things already, so where are you going?
Where I'm going with this is that there's a consistency within the State Historic Preservation Division and the Barrel Councils to data recover, but then remove my kupuna iwi, even on the mountain.
So Mr. Rechtman has not conducted data recovery at Mauna Kea.
If you can establish that foundation first, then we'll allow you to go forward, but until that foundation is laid, I'm going to sustain the objection.
Excuse me. Have you ever done any work with the Office of Mauna Kea Management?
I've never been hired by the Office of Mauna Kea Management for anything.
Have you ever done any work with them?
With them,
Yes.
I would consider this work that I'm doing for TMT is kind of with them because they
Yes.
manage the mountain.
That's what I was getting to. Thank you.
Okay.
Have you worked with the cultural advisor group Kahukumana?
I believe on one occasion in the past, I was before Kahukumana.
That was before Kahukumana, is that?
I
what you said?
was on one. I went to a Kahukumana meeting at one occasion in the past. Yes.
Thank you. I believe you stated earlier that you have never done any archaeological research on Mauna Kea.
That's not what I stated.
Could you clarify that for me, please?
Prior to being engaged by the 30-meter telescope to do the monitoring work that we did in 2013, I had not conducted any archaeological projects on the summit of Mauna Kea.
Had you done any on the, say, mid-level section like Halepoaku.
I've done projects on most on the eastern, northern, and southern flanks of the mountain for various entities.
Okay. Prior to the groundbreaking ceremonies that was held in October of 2014, had you done any archaeological research in that area for TMT or the Office of Mauna Kea Management?
Yes.
To what extent could you explain that, please?
Prior to the groundbreaking ceremony, immediately prior to the groundbreaking ceremony, we conducted archaeological monitoring of the prepared pad area where the ceremony was going to take place. And prior to that, we conducted archaeological monitoring associated with geotechnical bore testing for the development site.
You say you have heard, or you have an understanding that to some Native Hawaiians, that Mauna Kea is considered a temple and a religious site. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you consult with any religious practitioners regarding digging around in our temple to find Eevee?
I didn't do any digging around to find Eevee.
You said that you were responsible or there for the pre-site evaluation of the area that was going to be used for the groundbreaking ceremony. Is that correct?
Yes, we monitored those activities.
You monitored those activities. Didn't you say that you had been there a couple days beforehand to just assess the site?
I'd been there before and looked at the site, yes.
Excuse me, my computer keeps on cutting off me. I just got to read. In the document referred to as the Archaeological Monitoring Report for the construction of the grade site pad for the 30-meter telescope groundbreaking ceremony, that was prepared by yourself and Mr. Plunkett, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I heard earlier in an earlier cross-examination that you said that during the time of the groundbreaking that the bulldozers simply moved the rocks to the side. Is that correct?
You misheard. That's not correct.
Could you tell me what you guys did do? I believe you had several pieces of equipment up on that mountain at that time, or you were a witness to several pieces of equipment at that time. Could you identify those two pieces of equipment? There are figures 9 and 10 in the section called Field Methods and Findings.
I'm sorry, which exhibit are you looking at?
I'm looking at, it's the archaeological monitoring report for the construction of the graded site for the 30-meter telescope groundbreaking ceremony.
I have that now.
Yes, it's C14, I'm sorry.
Your Honor, I just want to note that Mr. Fergerstrom has the exhibits that we provided to, with regard to Mr. Rechtman, and he has them in his computer, and he's reading from them now.
I don't know who you are.
Okay.
I don't know who you are, ma'am. You're not part of the parties.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I do have them on my computer. I have been trying desperately to find a way to get it on my computer. That's why very early in this process, I required a hard copy be sent to me because I do not have control over my electronics and my computers. I have to
understand.
rely on being here and being able to capture as much as I can while I'm in a spot where I can catch it.
And when we were present in October, I did order them to turn over hard copies to you.
That's correct.
And to their knowledge, they have done that. So
Okay.
please continue.
Okay, so also on that same note, I have tried to find, and I will do my best to check my own stuff. My entire living room is filled with documents, okay? So I will go through my documents too, and it's labeled by date. And I will go through and make sure that those documents that they claimed that they sent to me actually was sent to me. Because I believe what they sent to me was a list of what they had, but not the documents themselves. And I will go verify that, and I'll report to you as soon as I can possibly find out. But it's all in my living room. But however, these particular documents I've been able to download. Some of it's brought to my attention. And so I am referring right now to Figure 9 and Figure 10 under the title of 4, Field Methods and Findings.
And that's Exhibit 15.
No, that's Exhibit 9 and 10. There are two pieces of equipment there. Could you describe to me what these pieces of equipment do?
I'm assuming that you're talking about the Hitachi 470 excavator?
Yes, that's one.
And then the D6 Caterpillar bulldozer.
Okay. There's another piece of equipment there that looks like it's
Yeah, I see that in the photograph. It's a small rock crusher.
a rock crusher.
Yeah.
So in fact, those rocks that were removed from there were actually crushed. Is that correct?
It appears that they were on-site crushing.
But you said that you were there on site to monitor.
I had a monitor on site. Yes.
You have stated that you are aware that some Hawaiians refer to as Mauna Kea is not only a temple but also a burial ground.
I've heard that claim, yes.
When you do archaeological work, do you find it important to go look at some of the history of the area so you can understand what may be there, what
Yes.
may have been there before, that kind of stuff? That would be reasonably assumption, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay. You said that you were also on site there with Mr. Wally Ishibashi, who's the cultural advisor for Office of Mauna Kea Management. Is that correct?
We were on site at some point together, yes.
Okay. Are you currently aware of a new burial site that may have been identified or been registered with the Historic Preservation Division? That is also part of my exhibits. Regarding a burial right in the area of the batch plant and the sub-millimeter arrays.
I'm not aware of a location of that burial site that you're talking about.
Okay. And so, you know, you and I have known each other for a long time. And
Yes.
we've had, as much as we've had difficult times to deal with what we deal with in our particular capacities, we've tried to remain at least okay with each other. We can speak to each other.
I consider you a friend.
Thank you. I do too. I think of you the same. I believe you stated earlier that you're not Native Hawaiian.
Correct.
I believe you stated earlier that you have never had any cultural or religious training from any religious or cultural practitioners. Is that correct?
Correct. I've had no formal training.
Formal training. If you've had previous information knowing that the area is considered sacred and that it is a burial ground, does it not occur to you the amount of harm that you're doing by digging into our graves?
I didn't do any digging into any graves.
But you stood there and watched our graves being dug and crushed and spewed across the roads.
Objection, argumentative, no question asked.
Sustained.
In working with, well, not necessarily under contract, but working with Office of Mauna Kea Management and with Wally Ishibashi, who's the cultural advisor. He also sits on the council called Kahukumana, which is the cultural advising group for Office of Mauna Kea Management. You don't know that?
I don't know that.
Okay. The reason I'm trying to get to there is because I'm trying to establish that as much effort as we try to bring information to the Office of Mauna Kea Management and to the University of Hawaii, this information never seems to leave their hands and never gets in the hands like persons like you who are an archaeologist that are hired or contracted by people like 30-meter telescope to go do archaeological reports on areas that are very culturally sensitive to the Hawaiian people, and yet you do not have the information that we provide to help guide you. That's what I'm driving at. And I have some of this in my...
Objection, Your Honor, this is just argument.
Sustained.
Okay, well, I'll try not to put it in an argumentative form. However, I'm realizing that a lot of this information that I'm speaking about has not reached the evidentiary libraries, and I'll make sure it does. I thought that it would perhaps be there through Wally Shibashi as the cultural monitor for the Office of Mauna Kea Management. I believe that you also said in cross-examined by Mr. Freitas that when you folks do archaeological assessments, if you find something that seems to be of archaeological interest, that you folks do, you do things like carbon dating, you assess the dates of the findings that you find, is that correct?
On occasion.
On occasion. Do you use carbon dating?
I have prepared and submitted samples to a laboratory for carbon dating, yes.
Is carbon dating done on living things?
It's done on organic material.
Organic material. How do you date things like rock?
In an archaeological context, there is no specific technique, chemical, or any other way laboratory to get a date of a rock. In an archaeological context, geologically, there's decay things from various kinds of elements, but those get you dates of hundreds of thousands or millions of years old.
Is argon one of those types of uses?
Potassium argon dating, yes.
Yes. Have you sent any of the rocks on Mauna Kea out for geological dating?
I have never collected or sent any rocks from Mauna Kea anywhere.
You stated earlier that you have not had any formal training in any Hawaiian cultural or religious practices.
Correct.
Would that be safe to say that you certainly would not have any formal training in pre-contact religious?
Correct.
I believe when Ms. Aluli was cross-examining you, you had mentioned that you had done studies in other parts of the Pacific also?
I have.
You have? Has the mention of Mauna Kea ever come up in those cultural studies on various parts of Polynesia?
No.
So in your report of the second recon regarding the Ahu 1 and Ahu 2, how did you determine that they were not religious structures?
I didn't make any determination as to their function in my reports.
Do you know what an ahu is?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Do you know that Mauna Kea is a national natural landscape, nationally recognized in 1972?
Yes?
Are you familiar with the TMT's final EIS for Mauna Kea?
No.
Did you contribute to that final EIS for Mauna
No.
Kea? No. Did you not state earlier that you are the author of the archaeological monitoring report for the construction of the graded site pad for the 30-meter telescope groundbreaking ceremony?
Yes, I did.
That is also in the final EIS. That's why I'm asking you if you have knowledge of this.
Objection, Your Honor. Misstates facts and evidence. The final EIS was completed in May 2010. That's already in the record. This work was not performed until 2013.
Mr. Fergerstrom,
I'll move on.
was the document included in the final EIS? Sounds like that couldn't happen.
Well, there's a whole lot of stuff in this final EIS that doesn't seem to be properly in there, too.
But you're making a representation that that document is part of the final EIS that was done in 2010.
It is part of the documents filed by the TIO. In fact, I get back there, I described exactly what it says. This is part of document C14, C13, C12, C11, presented by TMT International.
What is offered in those exhibits?
In those exhibits is offered the testimony of Mr. Rechtman, the 30-meter telescope archaeological report done in October 2013, the letter from to Mr. Rechtman from the BLNR Historic Preservation regarding the approval of the TMT archaeological report in 2013.
But your question suggests that his contribution was to the final EIS, which was done in 2010.
Perhaps I'm a little confused as to which document is which, but I'll take your word for it. I'll move on.
I'll sustain the objection. How much longer do you have, Mr. Fergerstrom?
Not much longer. I realize it's getting late in the day. Thank you. I think I'll end right here. Thank you, Mr. Rechtman.
Thank you.
Ms. Kihoi?
Can I make a request to question this witness if he's called back in January? I mean, there's still a few more that are left to question him, so I don't see what,
You made a representation you were ready to go today. I'm going to ask you to do your cross-examination.
okay, that's fine. I just wanted to say that I wouldn't see the point of rushing through my questioning when there's only 15 minutes left and he's going to have to come back for the other.
I know you're ready to go, so please go ahead.
I'll begin. I might not finish though.
We'll see.
Aloha, Mr. Rechtman.
Aloha.
Mehana Kihoi. According to your written testimony, you have performed more than 800 cultural resource management projects. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how would you define the term cultural resource?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Could you explain to me what the cultural resource management industry is?
Yes? Another term for it would be to contract archaeology. So it's an industry that provides compliance services for various entities, compliance with state, federal, other kinds of regulations.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned in your testimony that you did, you mentioned Section 106. And what is Section 106?
Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. It is the federal regulation for, it's what contains the federal regulations for compliance with federal projects.
Okay. And was a Section 106 compliance report among the several reports prepared for the TMT and TIO project?
No.
Why not?
I don't believe that there was a federal nexus for that project.
Do you have an obligation to protect historic and cultural sites?
I feel like I do, yeah.
Okay. Could you give me a more thorough description of each of the 4 reports you listed in your testimony concerning the TMT project site?
Objection, Your Honor. The complete reports are attached as exhibits. I'm not sure, and he gave a summary of those. So it's been asked and answered or otherwise provided.
And also calling for a narrative, so I'm going to ask you to go ahead and ask a specific question, please.
Okay. Were there other reports that you prepared that you did not list in that summary?
There was one other short letter report that I did that I already talked about. Yes.
Okay. Can you, I'm sorry, can you remind me of whose questioning that applied to? Just so I can.
Mr. Flores.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Was a cultural impact analysis among these reports?
I did not conduct a cultural impact assessment, no.
Why not?
I was not asked to.
Okay. Are you aware if the TMT project had a grading permit?
I don't know.
Are you aware if they had a grubbing permit?
I don't know.
Is that typically something that is required?
Of somebody who's grubbing and grading in the county of Hawaii, it's typically required.
And who would be the person to I noticed that Mr. Ng is standing up and I haven't even completed my question yet.
So finish it.
I'm trying to think of what I was going to ask.
Go
I
ahead.
don't remember. Okay.
So
it's
who
gonna
would be the
Who would
person?
okay. Who would be the person to apply for that permit?
Objection, Your Honor, goes beyond the scope of his direct examination. No foundation that he has any knowledge of whether or not permits were applied for or obtained by TMT prior to the grubbing and grading that took place with regard to the groundbreaking.
So why this question for this witness? He's the archaeologist.
I was just asking if he knew.
Okay, I need
If
to
anyone
sustain the
applied.
objection
That's
then.
fine.
All right.
Are you familiar with the ASM affiliates website?
Yes?
On the construction services page of the ASM affiliates website, one of the services offered is described as sacred land and file searches. Are you familiar with that?
No?
Why not?
The Hawaii branch of ASM has its own website, and that's not on that website.
So they don't offer that service?
The Hawaii branch?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't, no. It refers to something on the mainland, I believe.
Okay. So as Vice President of ASM Hawaii, wouldn't it be safe to say that your parent company acknowledges the existence of sacred land, or rather that there are lands which are considered sacred?
Yes?
At ASM Hawaii, are there any Native Hawaiians employed with the company or on its staff?
Yes?
Were any of them involved with any of the reports you made for this project?
Yes?
And how did they assist you?
They were in one of the monitors was Native Hawaiian, and during the reconnaissance work, one of the surveyors was, but I don't discriminate or condition on people's ethnicity, so I don't. Whether they were Native Hawaiian or not, they're archaeologists.
Well, it's just it's a significant area where I think Native Hawaiian input is valued at a site like this. Can you recall any of their names?
They're listed on the reports. Kamuela Plunkett, Lauren Kepa, are the only two of my staff that are Native Hawaiian who are participating on these projects.
Okay, so just those two that you can recall.
On these TMT
Okay.
projects, yes.
Were there any other Native Hawaiians that were given the opportunity to assist?
There were other Native Hawaiians on my staff, but none of them declined. I mean, if you're asking, did I ask someone to work there and they chose not to? No.
Yeah, that was basically what I was asking.
No.
Thank you. Okay. Are you aware that the Northern Plateau, the area proposed for the TMT project, is a spiritually and culturally sensitive area?
Not specifically, no.
Was this ever considered in your report?
No.
You may have been asked this already, and I'm not too sure. Have you ever identified what might be considered contemporary structures in your surveys?
Yes?
And who made that determination? You did, yourself?
Yes?
Okay. And how are these sites or structures treated?
We documented them and took photographs and told people that they exist there.
Okay. Were any cultural practitioners informed about these findings?
No? Not that I know of.
Okay. In your professional experience, would the absence of burials in historic properties necessarily indicate a lack of cultural or historical significance?
There may or may not be a relationship between the two.
And over the course of compiling these various reports, did you consult with any Native Hawaiians as individuals or as organizations?
Which reports are you referring to?
Your reports for the TMT project.
I did no consultation for those reports.
Okay. Were cultural practitioners made aware or given opportunities to provide input on the boring that had taken place for the proposed 30-meter telescope?
I'm not aware.
So if any concerns were raised, you weren't aware of those concerns?
No.
And none of those comments would have been considered in your work?
I wasn't provided with any comments.
Okay. In your surveys, do you consider the mountain in its entirety as a sacred site?
In the work that we do, I just take that as a given, that the mountain's considered by some people to be a sacred site.
In its entirety or in specific regions?
In its entirety.
Okay. And is that documented anywhere in your report? That there are people that may consider the mountain in its entirety to be a sacred site?
Potentially by sentences like Mauna Kea and its summit cinder cones to this day still play an important. Oh, sorry. It's the light. There are statements in Exhibit C12, page 1, that may address what you're asking.
Do you have it available right in front? Can you read it to me if possible?
Mauna Kea and its summit cinder cones to this day still play an important role in religious and cultural practices to many Native Hawaiians and non-Native Hawaiians alike.
So just to clarify, it references the summit cinder cone, not necessarily the mountain in its entirety.
What I say here is Mauna Kea and its summit cinder cones.
Okay. But specifically mentioning the summit cinder cone.
As well as Mauna Kea itself.
Okay. How would a consideration of the mountain in its entirety as a sacred site affect your findings?
again, we did monitoring work. We didn't do an analysis of the significance of Mauna Kea. So it didn't have that great of an effect on the findings of our watching, the work take place.
Okay. And would or should the TMT be able to be constructed if it were considered sacred?
Objection, Your Honor. That's not, well, that's foundation. It calls for speculation from this witness.
Would you care to respond?
Well, he mentioned that he did note that it does have significance to Native Hawaiians. And so I'm just wondering if that would have an impact on if the project should still be able to be constructed.
To me, the two are somewhat different, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay, that was my last question. Thank you, Mr. Rechtman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kihoi. Dr. Rechtman, we're going to excuse you for the day, and I'm afraid we're going to need to ask you to come back. So if you don't mind stepping down.
Thank you.
Mr. Ng or Mr. Shinyama, who will your witnesses be on the 3rd and the 4th?
We will be calling Gary Saunders on the 3rd of January.
So can Dr. Rechtman come back? Because we just have a few more.
Yes, I will have to work out a schedule with him.
Will he be able to come back on the 3rd, or is that not possible?
I don't know. I don't think it's possible. I have made arrangement for Mr. Saunders to fly out and be here for that period of time.
For the 3rd?
From the 3rd, yes.
Ms. Aluli?
Your Honor, as you know, we have our hearing scheduled for the 5th on whether the document referenced in Mr. Stone's WDT and also in Mr. Saunders will be produced. And so I know Mr. Ng has his memo due on the 3rd. So if Mr. Saunders is going to testify, I'm going to have to go through this on the 3rd. That
Is the document related to Sanders' testimony?
it's the decommissioning revolving plan that was tendered to OKMK in 2014 and is referenced in Mr. Stone's witness direct testimony. He was crossed on it, and it's also referenced in Mr. Saunders' witness direct testimony, which is why I brought it up today, because I'm trying to be timely.
Yes,
And I know that we have to do these by written motion. So if you want me to expedite it, I could try and I can do it more quickly. I'm supposed to have mine in on the 29th.
I appreciate that offer, and that's what we might have to do.
I know the 26th is I could get something filed by the 27th. If we can just get this done, and then maybe Mr. Ng can get it done by the 30th, which is a Friday, and that way we can have some resolution on the 3rd.
Would that be okay with you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, I thank you, Ms. Lalui. I appreciate that offer. And Mr. Ng, thank you for your cooperation as well. I was going to remind everyone about that schedule, so I will go ahead and revise the dates and see if anyone has any objections. But that being the case, then Sanders would come on the 3rd, Tuesday, and then who would be coming after Sanders?
You mean after Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
I will be sending out a witness notification. I just need to know the date. So it could be either Paul Coleman, Heather Kaluna, or we would bring Mr. Rechtman back to complete his cross.
Okay, so Dr. Kaluna, Saunders, and you had another witness? Oh, Coleman. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
There were, I don't know if Mr. Hallstrom is still on your witness list, or is he off?
He is on the witness list, but I don't know whether we're going to be able to call them as a result of the schedule. So I have to verify that.
Well, I also think the last time we spoke to you, which was maybe yesterday, I don't remember, a couple days back, but I think the last time we spoke to you, Mr. Ng, I think you weren't going to call Hallstrom. So I recall that it was Kaluna, Coleman, Saunders left, and then, of course, Rechtman. So I guess, but I mean, it's up to you. But at some point, we're going to need to, the reason it's important is because I need to ask Ms. Ward who her witnesses are going to be and give her a deadline to let everybody know. That's the reason I'm trying to plan it out.
Judge, I know we filed a collective witness list.
Yes, you did.
And that is a subject, that has been of concern in terms of, we're going to designate amongst ourselves which witness goes with which party, petitioner. And then we will set up, I know Kalani has a format that we're going to follow that's similar to what you and the UH have been providing. I think you're the one that has the Excel spreadsheet. One of the two of you does. So we will, I guess we just need to have a date when we think we're going to get started, and we'll, I know that's the purpose of this conversation.
Exactly.
Thank you, Judge.
So I'm not really clear, Ms. Aluli, I apologize, but, well, all right, so let's take care of the things we know first. So we know the TIO witnesses, next witnesses will be Saunders, Kaluna, Coleman, and completion of Rechtman. And you intend to submit
Yes.
the notice of witness list by when?
We would definitely have it out by the 27th, but we will try to get it out by the 23rd, which is Friday, this Friday.
I appreciate that. You know, I feel like I could just sort of say you folks get the first week, third, fourth, fifth fixture witnesses, and then at least we could give the Mehana Kihoi whole group and the individual persons the next week, which is, I think, 4 days. But I'm fearful because that does require some planning, and I don't want to confuse anybody. It feels to me like it's better if I ask you to confirm it and then lock it in place. I feel like I can't just sort of leave it out there and it'll happen, and I worry about that.
So, Judge, are you saying that you want us to give you our Excel spreadsheets per
No,
party?
I don't care about Excel spreadsheets for you guys.
No,
I care about it for me. But what I care about is we follow the same pattern we have had from the beginning. And so Ms. Ward says, I think I heard you a little while ago say, you're okay with the 48-hour rule.
Well, Judge, one thing I want to say is that in our collective exhibit witness list, the parties were given, a 4. I think what were we? B, and then there was B1, which was KAHEA, B2. And then under that, the exhibits, that's why some of these exhibits have double alphabets.
I understand.
So the exhibits associated with the parties have been...
I'm not worried about that. For exhibit lists, it's just important that they have separate identifications. as far as the record is concerned, I don't care who it's attached to. We just need them separated, and you've done that, and I don't have a problem with that. The reason you have a single witness list is because you had a single
Attorney.
representation at the
Right.
time. So I'm just going to hold everybody to the 48-hour rule, and that's what we have to do. So I think on perhaps the 3rd, we'll get a better sense, but I would probably be asking Ms. Ward at that time who her witnesses will be, and they may have to come on Thursday, because we won't know if we're going to be done or not.
Although in our lineup, B1 was KAHEA, and that,
Maybe I can give some clarity to this. So, as you know, everything regarding our petitioners were listed collectively under B as our exhibits. So, what we're in the process of doing, we're already started, is to separate them out to which particular party the witnesses and their corresponding exhibits would be. And our intention is to submit a list when we know the schedule as it goes within 48 hours who will be coming up and be prepared to submit their testimony, just like the UH Council and TIO's Council has done. So we intend to do the same in the same fashion. So just to clarify that.
That works fine for me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
And it's really okay, Mr. Flores and everyone, if BAB and B3 and B whatever go together with a particular witness. It doesn't have to go with the party. The party just calls the witness. The witness is tied to the exhibits. The exhibits are individually identified. That's all we need. Okay? So on the 3rd, be prepared to tell us, Ms. Ward, who your witnesses are going to be, and you may need your witnesses available on Thursday. We won't know until we get done with TIO.
Flexibility, however, to give the names of 3 or 4 people that are coming up in the sequence. And if something comes up and that one person can't do it, another one may be taken out of place. And that's exactly the same that TIO did.
Well, that's not
recently.
what happened today.
Not today, but it is what they submitted last week, is that here are 3 people, they may be taken out of order. And we may have to do the same thing. I'm not saying because of something. What I'm saying is sometimes people have to come out of order.
It looks like the preparation is affected by the order of the testimonies. So just bear that in mind, because that's what I heard today.
Yeah, I understand. They did need the flexibility, but they had the discretion of the flexibility, and we're asking for the same kind of discretion. We may need to say, so-and-so has to go back and teach, because some of our people are professors at the university. They may be available on a Tuesday and not a Wednesday, and we may have to put them in when they are available.
We'll see.
Okay, we're going to do our best. We do. We do our best.
Mr. Yang?
Just a minor clarification. So we're going to file on the, Saluli's going to file her motion on the 27th. I'd like to request that any joinders in that motion be filed, at that time as well. We will respond with our response on the 30th of December.
Okay, so I think the joiners, we should give them at least a day or two, maybe till the 29th. So joiners are usually just joiners, so it won't be difficult to, I think, include the consideration in your reply or response. Please. So the hearing then is going to be on the 3rd at 9 o'clock.
and joiners on the 29th.
By the 29th. I'll repeat this, because I have 5 items that I need to cover. So, all right. So the first one I'd like to cover is TIO's remaining witnesses are Dr. Heather Kaluna, Gary Saunders, Mr. Coleman, I think it's Paul Coleman, and Rechtman, completion of Rechtman. And you're not limited to that, Mr. Ng. Should you choose to call Hallstrom or someone else, you still have the right to do that. But I anticipate that there is going to be an end within sight. And so my next issue is, well, the second matter I wanted to cover is that we need to have Ms. Ward's witnesses at least be ready to let us know who they are on the 3rd. I can make it earlier if you want.
Well, they may be ready to go by the 5th.
Well, quite honestly, the 3rd is too late because that's not 48 hours. But I don't think anybody's going to have objections because of the holidays. So I thought I would give you a little leeway, but I'll see if anybody objects. The third matter is the motion for production of that specific document. And that's exactly how I want the motion to be titled.
Motion for production of documents.
That specific document, the name of that document. So we all know what we're dealing with. That's going to be due by the 27th. And any joinders by the 29th. All of this in December. And any response by the 30th. And again, all you need to do is send it to Mr. Kane, OCCL, and they'll file it. And that'll be filed in the documents library. Okay? Not as an evidentiary hearing. Well, yes, not as an evidentiary hearing. It is going to be a hearing motion, but we will not take evidence for that motion. We will have the hearing on that motion on the 3rd at 9 a.m. And that we're intending to do this because, if I hear you right, Ms. Aluli, the representation, or rather that document may be important when folks are examining Mr. Saunders. And since he's expected to come on the 3rd, we'll make the ruling that day. The fourth matter I want to cover deals with subpoenas, because very early on, some folks wanted to call certain witnesses for whom we know you wouldn't be able to get written direct testimony. And I wanted to wait until the university and TIO closed their witnesses, so then you folks would have a chance, the opposition would have a chance to determine what witnesses they needed to subpoena. And I think I said some time back that we would take it up at the right time. So my deadline for notice of subpoenas of witnesses will be 1 week after the close of TIO's case. All I want is the notice, and then we'll have time for objections, then we'll set it for a hearing, and I'll make a decision, and then we'll issue the subpoenas if it's appropriate. So to me, it needs to be, I want to call this person, and these are the reasons why, and this is my offer of proof. Okay, does that make sense? And when we get the witnesses to come, we may have to take those witnesses out of order, or at the end of all of the current witnesses, we'll just have to see how that works. Okay? Then the last matter that I wanted to cover, that I am covering, okay. We decided early on also, we tried different things, but what we came out of this was, at the end of all of the testimony, we would then consider the receipt of exhibits. We haven't received any exhibits. So what I'm going to ask the university and TIO, when they are done with their witnesses, I'm going to ask them to file motions for admission of exhibits and list the exhibits. We won't deal with it right now, but I want to know, I want everybody to know which exhibits are being offered And I expect those lists to include the written direct testimonies because they already testified. So to me, I have to receive the written direct testimonies of those persons who testified. I have to receive that in evidence. Makes sense, right?
Like Mr. Nice's,
Yeah.
he used a template. He only verified that he had written.
But you cross-examine him on the written statement, so if you don't have it in the record and I don't receive it as an exhibit, it's going to be difficult. As far as how much weight to give it, that's up to me later on. And, we'll have to deal with that then. But right now I want a weight so that everyone knows which exhibits are being offered. Okay, so then at the end we will have a then I'll have a process for objections, and then we'll deal with what I admit and what I don't admit.
And this is just for UH and TIO.
Because they're the only ones who finished their case. So once Ms. Ward is done with her case, I expect her to do one on her behalf. Same thing with each offerer. So then at the end of everybody's cases, we'll have the whole list of exhibits. Everyone will have had plenty of time to consider everything, and we can deal with it at that time. I'm expecting that a lot of this will be stipulated, honestly, by that time. But I leave it to folks to think about what they want to do, and I'll make decisions. Okay, so Mr. Fergerstrom?
Will you also be able to take up to 2 motions I still have pending? One is to recall Mr. Stone, and the second one is to disqualify TIO as a party to the contested case and its entries into evidence.
And I think I told you to go ahead and file your motions, but they will be
did.
non-hearing motions. You can do that anytime you want.
Yes, I actually have. We were kind of holding off until we got the stuff from the court, but the motion to recall Mr. Stone I filed several weeks ago.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not going to set deadlines for that. We're not going to have a hearing on it.
Okay.
All right. So put your reasons in there, and then I wait long enough for people to comment. Mr. Louis Kwan, something else? Don't dismantle yet. I have to repeat all this. I know I do. Sorry. Ms. Peixota?
I just wanted to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you. And thank you for your patience, everyone.
So let me repeat. Thank you, Ms. Peixota. Let me repeat. Item number 1, TIO witnesses remaining are Dr. Heather Kaluna, Gary Saunders, Paul Coleman, Dr. Rechtman, and there may be others, but for now we know these folks are coming on the 3rd and the 4th. We'll see how far we go. Number 2, Ms. Ward, I'll ask you to please identify your witnesses. It's less than 48 hours, but because of the holidays, I'm going to give you till the 3rd to... I understand. To let us know who the witnesses will be. And that's going to be possibly on Thursday. That's why we need it.
Mr. Saunders is going to take at least a day and a half.
Well, we'll see. Ms. Aluli, you asked earlier about the order that Ms. Peixota actually goes first. But when we started this, they asked to exchange. So Ms. Ward is going first. When we started taking witnesses, so Ms. Ward will be the first presenter.
So you want us to go in the order in which we have examined?
Exactly.
I have been advocating for a kind of a more chronological, and I'm a big believer in Mo'olelo, so I have been advocating that they consider presenting their case in a, taking into consideration a chronology and a story. And so to the extent that I know that I know it can get, not the most linear presentation, but would we be able to have some latitude so at least these folks can consider I don't know that you necessarily understood that they would be the first to put on witnesses when they set up who gets to ask questions
yeah,
first.
it was.
Really?
Sure, because we have been following an order from the beginning, including the pre-hearing motions. And the order we have been following is there were the existing parties, which was UH and Mauna Kea Anaina Ho, and that included your client at that time.
Right.
And then it was TIO, who was the first party to move to join. And then we took them in the order in which they filed their motions to join. And that's why we have this existing order. But then when we started the taking of testimony, I've forgotten whether it was Mr. Wardeman or one of you folks, who said, well, actually, I think it was Mr. Wardeman.
No, he wasn't here when they started taking testimony.
No, before that.
Okay.
We talked about how the hearing was going to go, and he suggested that TIO go after UH.
Right.
And because they have similar interests. There was a discussion also about Pueo. I declined to accept that offer or suggestion. So UH, and that's the reason we have the order we do. So it's TIO, then it goes directly in the order, then it goes to MKAH and their group, and then we go in the order in which the motions to join were filed.
That's exactly what we're concerned about. We thought that MKH as a group was able to organize our witnesses so that it was functional with the witnesses.
I'm not averse to something that will be efficient.
Okay.
But I am not going to, but I would like a good reason to deviate from that because we have been following this order in cross-examination, in pretty much everything.
But we've been working as a team, and we didn't understand that we had to be individual at this point. We thought that as a team of pro se people suddenly put in that position that we could actually shuffle our witnesses to the extent that it was convenient for the witnesses.
No one asked me. And as far as convenience to the witnesses, I've been telling you throughout that when your turn comes, you'll understand about why the shuffling was necessary and how difficult it is to give this notice.
I do understand.
And sometimes it's not possible.
Yeah.
So in any event, my expectation is we follow the plan, but if you give me a good reason, I certainly will consider it.
So Judge, I just want to say we're not I'm just looking at this petitioner's group and the order in which, because KAHEA has opted to put itself last within the petitioner's group. They may not be the last in the citation on the pleading as the petitioners.
Yes, you did that after
I filed an appearance.
Right, and after the withdrawal of counsel. So I can understand there needs to be some discussion about the organization, no problem.
Right.
But if we could wrap this up, so I hope you hear,
Right.
I'm open to hearing as long as there's a good reason. But otherwise, we follow the pattern.
The pattern within the petitioner's group.
With all the entire group.
Yeah, but I mean, what happened is it was Deborah, so we'll try to present a basis for if we deviate from that.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, so the third thing, don't forget, is we have a hearing on the 3rd at 9 a.m. on motion for production of that specific document. The motion deadline is the 27th, joinders by the 29th, reply by the 30th, hearing on the 3rd at 9 a.m. The fourth matter is subpoenas of witnesses. Those who think they need witnesses subpoenaed will need to submit a request for subpoena 1 week after TIO rests. Because by then you should know who you need to subpoena, I think. And I'm not foreclosing other times, but this is going to be an opportunity for us to organize a little bit better. And there will be opportunity there to oppose, and hopefully I'll decide whether it needs a hearing or not. And the final thing is I'm asking the university to submit a motion for admission of its exhibits, including all their written direct testimonies of those witnesses who testified. Obviously, I'm not going to I don't think I'm going to receive in evidence written direct testimony of folks who didn't testify. Okay, so does everybody have that down? Yes, Mr. Kamara.
Can you please read off the dates that have been set again? January and February as far out as they have been set?
Okay, it's in the website. It has the dates on it, but I'd be happy to repeat it if you want.
Yes, please.
Okay. Here are the dates that we have set in January. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 9, 10, 11, 12, 19, 23, 24, 25, 26, 30, and 31. So, as for all of the other individuals who will need to plan on witnesses as well, I can't give you dates right now. We'll have to see how everything goes when Mauna Kea, Anainaho, and KAHEA are done, because that'll give us a better estimate, and then after that, we'll be going pretty much one by one, so you'll have a good idea. And we'll also get a flavor for how long those witnesses will be examined, because I expect that's going to be different as well. Okay? Should be, but I'm not counting on anything. Ms. Ward?
Yes, I'm going to make a statement now just so that you understand that I'm getting off the plane just before the hearing starts on the 3rd, and I may well ask not to be the first person to give my testimony on the 5th. So, it would be much better if I were able to start on the following Monday. So I'm just going to say now that this is the only time I'm going to see my mother this year, and I really don't want to ruin my vacation by having to rewrite my testimony while I'm there. And I'm working on it now. I mean, I'm somewhere on it, but I have not rewritten it yet, and I don't want to have to do that while I'm in Pennsylvania. So I am not going to commit to being able to give my witness testimony on Thursday.
And Ms. Ward, with all due respect, I cannot commit to you that you won't be. So we know what the plan is, but I know that you'll need to consult with others, and that I'll wait to hear.
We'll do our best.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, everybody, we'll see you. Oh, please don't forget to work on your findings of fact, conclusions of law, decision, and order. I know it's asking a lot, but it's a lot of work to do that, and you'll be helping yourself a great deal. If you take a look at the samples that were uploaded in October, it's in the documents library, and you start to at least put an outline together for yourself, because if you wait till the end, you're going to be shortchanged a lot. It's a lot of work. So that's the only reminder I want to give. Otherwise, happy holidays to everybody, and we'll see you on the 3rd at 9 o'clock.
Contested case hearing for the 30-meter telescope project, a proceeding for the State of Hawaii, BLNR, Board of Land and Natural Resources.